Okay, so this is the 59th class of our Jewish coaching course, or Torah coaching based on Torah. And what I'd like to do today is two parts. One will be more, I've felt more and more of a need over the past few weeks of doing something more practical. Let me just try to mute whoever's making that. Well, I can't even mute people, so if everybody could just mute their own. So Mina and Ruti Abramovitz, you guys are still unmuted. So if you could mute yourselves. So I felt more and more of a need to use practically everything that we've learned. Especially the faith part, less so much the confidence part. Although I've over the past week been focusing also on confidence, and I want to share that with you because I think that we all need also some exercises to actually do to help us get through this period of time. It only sort of clicked in my head over the last couple of weeks that we're going to be in this strange limbo for quite some time probably, and we need to find strategies to get rid of the stress, because this is going to cause a lot of stress for a lot of people, and we know that stress is probably the most significant factor when new diseases erupt in a person's life. Obviously we have some kind of proclivity in our bodies for certain things to not function as well, but stress seems to be the mitigating factor, or the most vulnerable part of our body-mind interaction seems to be hurt by the stress. I can't even mute them, so Ruti Abramovitz and Mina Leah, if you could please mute yourselves, because I can't mute you.
I don't know how.
Look for it. Look for where you mute.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't know it wasn't.
It's okay. Just turn it off now. There's a little microphone on the left bottom part of the screen. It says mute. Just hit the mute button. And Mina Leah also, if you could do that. I don't know if she's listening.
I just discovered that you have to kind of touch the bottom of the screen for the little icons to come up. And once you touch the screen, then you'll see the little microphone, and touch that and it will...
Okay. So we want to use what we've learned so far to release the stress, to get rid of the stress. On the one hand, that'll be our faith, and the other side will be to strengthen our confidence. And that was actually what we talked about last time, that I wanted to do an excursion to Bat Ayin, or at least I thought that was what we were talking about, to go out in the night and to practice this. But we can do it just as well with guided imagery, and we can try to mimic a lot of the benefits just by doing it with our minds. It's not the same effect entirely, but it might be a good stage to start with, a good step forward. So before we get to that, I want to advance a little bit in the text and want to learn a little bit more about it. What we stopped with last time is Abraham receiving the power to go beyond the limits of nature. And we talked a lot about how life is all about overcoming limitations. And that if we were to sum up the very core of what Yiddishkeit is about, so it's serving God.
Guys, I'm on a Zoom class. Do you know how to mute it so they don't hear me? Mute it so they're hearing me, but they don't want to hear me.
So if we were to sum up all of Yiddishkeit in one word, or two words. It's what we say in the verse right after Shema, Uvechol meodecha, with all of your might. And with all of your might really translates with all of your ability to go beyond your limits. Because the essence of this world is that it is a limited world. That's why it conceals godliness. It conceals godliness because God, by definition, cannot be contained in something that has limits. So our world, which is a world of limits, by definition conceals God. And that's the nature of the tzimtzum, of the contraction. And that's the idea behind all of life, is to overcome limits. Is to overcome this limitation. And if it's in a religious capacity, in a divine service capacity, it means to meet that which is beyond the limit. That which is beyond what I see with my eyes, what I experience through the world. So in that sense, all of life is about pushing beyond. Now this idea is captured exactly in what we said about Avraham, and it goes hand in hand with God addressing Avraham and telling him, Italech lefanai ve'yetamim, walk before me and be whole, because the next thing that Avraham, and we said that that's confidence, that's overcoming the limits. And that's exactly the nature, the essence of the mitzvah, of the commandment that Avram received when God told him to do that. What was that commandment? That commandment was to walk before me and be whole by circumcising yourself. The commandment of circumcision. Circumcision encapsulates the notion of going beyond the limits. We said that first Avram had to come to a state which he shared with Noach, for instance, what we called equanimity. We call this faith. His faith was such that whether you give me a child or you don't, it's all the same to me. That's the level of faith that Avram has. But by being told to go and walk before God, he's being told to not be equanimous, not to feel that all things are equal, they're all the same. He's being told you have to break forward. You have to push more than just. And the first mitzvah that he receives to perform the circumcision captures that notion. How? So the simple idea is that the circumcision he's commanded to. Why? Because God created the reality that we are in 7 days. The number that's associated with creation is 7. So because creation, as we said, is what limits the revelation of God, then going beyond is, or anything that has to do with 8. There used to be a show in America when I was growing up. It's called 8 is Enough. So I don't know who came up with the name of that. Was it with Dick Van Dyke? Whoever remembers it. So I don't know who came up with that name. It was about this man who had 8 children, and he had been widowed from a widower who had 8 children. And it was a sitcom more than anything else, I think. Or maybe it wasn't a sitcom, it was more drama-like. But the notion that 8 is enough is very deep, because it's saying that once you've reached the 8, you don't need to go further, because you've already gone beyond the limit. once you've passed the seven is the natural world, the world of limits. Once you've pushed through that and you've gone and reached the 8, you're beyond the limit. The 7 represents a state of mind of equanimity. It's equal, all the same. It doesn't really matter. It can be this way, it can be that way. The 8 represents a state in which the person says, I'm pushing forward beyond my limits. I'm not content with what the world tells me is possible. And whenever we talk about coaching or we talk about confidence, about building up, then we are talking, and I'll be right back. Okay, I hope that Can you guys still hear me? I keep getting that my internet connection is poor. But
No, because a bit
I can too.
behind.
okay.
I can hear okay.
Okay.
It's very shaky by me.
Yeah.
It's yes and no.
Yeah. Okay. It's how it is. I don't know how to fix it more. How does that relate to us today? That these are the states of the 7th day is Shabbos, and Shabbos is described in the Talmud as Kol melachtecha asuya, that all your toil is finished. This is not just a statement about you're not supposed to do work on Shabbos. This is saying that to enter into Shabbos, we've talked about this in the past, you have to enter the state of mind where you feel that you've finished. This is a state of equanimity. It's a time of faith. Everything is the same. That's why we don't work. That's really the inner meaning of it. Because it's as if we've finished everything we have to do. It's a state of mind, not just a state of action. State of mind where I feel that I've completed everything that I need to complete. It's all finished. So there's no week afterwards. There's no coming week. There's no thoughts, like the idea that you're not allowed to plan on Shabbos for what you're going to do Motzei Shabbos. You can't plan because there's nothing to plan for. Because if you're really in the right state of mind, it doesn't matter what will happen next week. Next week doesn't exist, really. It's a different world. The 7 represents the completion, not just the limits, but limits also mean you can take limits and you say these are not just boundaries. These are much more than that. They're actually the end. The full, complete cycle is finished. And so there's nothing really beyond that. We've talked about this a few times, that it's harder to imagine a universe actually that has a limit than an infinite universe. Because when you imagine that the universe is bounded, it's a finite size, you always have to ask, so if it's a finite size, what's on the other side? It's very hard to imagine. It's a hard state to be in. So if you're talking about space, that's really hard. But if you're talking about your toil in the world, that becomes much more possible. But it's still difficult. You have to enter the state where it's all the same. Whether it'll turn out this way or that way next week, it doesn't matter, because next week is as if it doesn't exist at all. That's the state of mind of the 7th day of the Shabbos. Kol melachtecha asuya. But What's the 8th day? The 8th day is that even though the 7th day completed the cycle and everything was finished, Vayechal Elokim bayom hashvi'i, God completed on the 7th day all that He had done. And so when Rashi says Ma haya chaser, what was the world missing? It was missing menucha. So people understand the menucha in the sense of rest, but really it means internally it's a state of mind of being at rest. That there's no more that I need to accomplish. I've accomplished all that I need to do. That's the real rejuvenation of Shabbos. So the 8 is coming and saying, after Shabbos, there's a new rebirth of the world. I'm reborn. I'm a newborn after Shabbos. There's a new world that I'm entering. Why couldn't I say this in the first week, on the Sunday of the first week? So this is a whole topic that you really have to go through the cycle of finishing something to understand what it means to be born. You can't understand being born right away. You can only understand, in a certain sense, being reborn. I'll say it another way. When you're naive and innocent, you don't know that you're naive and innocent. But if you are able later in life to attain innocence again, innocence refound, call it, then you realize that you're innocent. Then you realize that you're reborn. You realize how fresh you are. If you can't do that, if you can't go through the whole process in such a way that you lose your innocence during the week, you gain it on Shabbos, and then you come out again, then you don't realize how much power there is in your innocence. And that's what it means to be whole. That's the wholeness that God was asking Avraham for. The wholeness that comes from regaining your innocence. Regaining who you are. Coming back to who you were. There's actually a song like that that's now being sung. Return to yourself or something like that. Return again, return again. It tries to capture the same idea. That it's finding your second innocence. So this is what the 8 represents. I finished a full cycle, and once I've finished the full cycle of 7, I start a new one. But now that I'm starting it again, I'm innocent. It's like I'm tamim, veyet tamim. I'm using the word innocent because it's sort of I don't like using the word naivete. I don't like saying somebody is naive. But really, that's what it's trying to capture. It's a state of being fresh off the boat. That you have no cynicism against the world. That you have no cynicism against yourself. That you have a feeling that I can succeed in my mission. So you need that 7th day to reach a state of mind where you're capable of attaining your mission. And that's why when Hashem told Avram to be whole, to be tamim, to be innocent if you want, to be naive, it had to be done on the 8th day. Because it's like you go through one cycle, and then the second cycle you realize how important it is that you've just started something fresh and new. You realize how much you've been reborn now to be able to do what you're looking to do. And if you're really innocent, then what happens to you is exactly what we talked about with the Mashiach, who's constantly innocent. He's constantly living in the 8th day. Remember that when we talked about Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, who goes up to in his soul to meet Mashiach, and he asks Mashiach, when are you coming? And he says, today. Because Mashiach is always in a state of mind of being in the 8th day. I'm being reborn today. That's what it says in chapter 2 of Tehillim, that Hashem says to the Mashiach, Ani yelediticha hayom. I gave birth to you today. We talked about it when we were discussing this answer that Mashiach gave to Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. Okay, so I think that's going to be enough about that. That's going to be the call it the intellectual side of what we're going to do today. And as I discussed in the beginning, I'd like to do a little bit more hands-on, which is something we haven't done that much. But again, I've felt the need more and more to use these techniques, and we haven't discussed them in ages. So I'd like to bring them back. The faith part that I'd like to do with you is the breathing exercises that Rav Ginsburg taught many years ago. And the more I use them now in the last few months, the more I'm feeling that they're essential. And again, as a stress relief, as a method to just relieve yourself of stress and to be able to function much better. A lot of people that I've talked to suddenly are afraid of the fact that they feel that their windpipe is constricted. They suddenly feel that it's hard to breathe, and they feel that maybe they got corona, or this happened to them, or that happened to them. And really it's stress. It's just fear. There's nothing really going on. So you might get a lump in your throat, feeling that you're even choking when it gets really bad. And the reason I heard about this is because somebody that one of the people that I work with told me that in Israel they've run out of the benzos that were usually prescribed. The most commonly prescribed anti-anxiety medicine is a type of benzo, and I can't remember the continuation. And it's gone. There's no more to be. There's no more to be had in the country. So they're giving all kinds of substitutes now. But it means that people are tremendously under stress, and the number one factor with stress is that people feel that they can't breathe. So when you say I can't breathe, really what you're saying is I'm under tremendous stress. So interestingly, the best way to get rid of that stress is to breathe with intention, is to breathe consciously, and not to just try to breathe mechanically the way we usually do. So if you remember these breaths, this breathing technique is called chedva. And chedva is spelled chet, daled, vav, hey. And the values of these letters are 8, 4, 6, and 5. On YouTube, on the Inner Org channel, you can find where Rav Ginsburg has 4 videos on this, explaining a lot of the inner meaning behind it. But what I'd like to just practice now and talk a little bit about is really basic things that have to do with this, and the one that I do the most. And even before we start the 8, 4, 6, 5, which is basically the pace, I want to stress this intention in it, this intent that you can have, which is that the letters of Shema Yisrael divide into 8, 4, 6, and 5. How do they divide that way? The first 2 words, Shema Yisrael, Shin Mem Ayin, first stage. The second stage is Yod Kei Vav Kei, Shema Yisrael, Hashem. Hashem is Yod Kei Vav Kei, 4 letters. Elokeinu, our God, Echad, instead of all 3 letters of the word Echad, we just treat it as 1, because that's what it means. So we have 5. So again, Shema Yisrael, that's 8 letters. Yud Kei Vav Kei, Hashem, 4 letters. Elokeinu, 6 letters. Hashem, you need to feel comfortable. It's not exactly like that you have to count off 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Really, if you can do that right now, anybody who has a siddur in front of them, just open up Shema Yisrael and look at the pasuk itself. And you can just, if you just look at the letters, you'll have the best pace that you can have. What's the idea here? Okay, so we talked about 8, 4, 6, 5. That's the pace. We start off with inhaling. The inhaling is for 8 counts, 8 letters. So we're basically going to do, and I'm going to show you the inhaling. I can't both inhale and speak at the same time. So you'll just count off 8. Okay, or I'll just do it with my fingers. So I'm inhaling. And when you inhale, to inhale for 8 beats, you're going to have to start from below your diaphragm, from your stomach, from your belly. It's called belly breathing. Otherwise, you won't be able to get enough air in. So you have to practice that. It doesn't come right away. But it's breathing from your abdomen, not from your chest. Okay? So I'm going to stand up a second and show you this. When I start breathing, I'm going to be breathing here. So see my hands move. And only when my abdomen is full, when my belly is full with air, will I move up to inflate my lungs up here. Really, you can't fill your belly with air. You're filling your lungs. But by pushing your belly out, you force yourself to use the full capacity of your lungs, the lower part, which is essential. So that if you don't start from abdominal breathing in your inhale, you'll never get to 8. I mean, if I just try to inflate my lungs, the top part, for 8 counts, this is what happens. Let's watch what happens. I'm just going to do my chest. So it's going to be, I'm done after 3. Even if I do it really quickly. I just can't. I don't have enough capacity in the top part of the lungs. You have to work from the bottom. So this is a great way. It's an incredible technique to force abdominal breathing, and I don't want to get into all the physiology behind it, but part of it is that we're, in a sense, massaging the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is the most important nerve of the autonomous systems in the body. It basically regulates almost everything. So it runs all the way from here, goes down, and all the way to the kidneys. And the only part it doesn't apparently affect is the adrenal glands, and we've had classes about that. But here what we're doing is we're massaging the whole inside of our body. So we're starting with the abdomen. And the abdomen is to get full capacity of the lungs. Everything is going to move, the whole diaphragm, the whole belly. So we're going to do an 8 count. So it looks something like this. I'm going to show it standing up. I'm going to try to do it with my hand. Just a moment. So that was quite a breath. I'm able to take a full 8 count in. Obviously, Zoom is not the best way to see this. If we could see each other in fully, you would see the whole movement. And really, you should do it either lying down or sitting down. It's really not so good to do it standing up. It makes it a lot harder. So the first stage is 8 count inhale, or Shema Yisrael, the 8 letters. So if you have it in front of you, just look at the letters. If you know it by heart, if you know the letters by heart, just imagine them in your mind. So let me do that. Okay. That's the first stage. The next stage is called hold. The hold is when I hold the air inside. So it's a short count, Yud Kei Vav Kei. When you hold, it's almost like you're holding these letters. I'll make it a little bit more complex as we go on. I first just want to get the basic rhythm down. So I'm filling myself inhaling for an 8 count and then holding for a 4 count. So that looks something like Shin, Mem, Ayin, Yud, Shin, Reish, Aleph, Lamed, Yud, Kei, Vav, Kei. Okay? Let me do it as a breath. Now, for me, the Yud Kei Vav Kei takes longer than it's not the same speed. That's why I don't like to use a metronome. Because I enjoy holding the air in as I think of Yud Kei Vav Kei. But I go through the letters in my mind. The next stage is a 6 count, Elokeinu. Aleph, Lamed, He, Yud, Nun, Vav. And that's an exhale. So the exhale by a 6 count, after you've taken so much air in, you're going to have to do it pretty quickly. At least that's how it works for me. So I exhale on these 6 letters. So I'm full, completely full. I've been holding it in. And now the most important and innovative part of this technique is the rest. We talked about rest before, equanimity. Equanimity means I don't care. I could have air or not have air. It's all the same to me. So after I've exhaled, I'm basically empty of air, and I stay like that for a 1 count. For the last count, which is 5. And we said that that's Yud Kei Vav Kei Echad. The 4 letters of Hashem's name is 1. And basically that's what Hashem is 1 means. That if I truly understand what it means that God is 1, that God is everything there is, then there's no reason for me to want it this way or that way. It can all be the same. It's all the same to me. That's the feeling of rest, like the rest of the Shabbos. The rest that we have on Shabbos, of being all things equal are equal to me. They're all the same. So let's try to do this, and to help you, I won't breathe now. I'll just give the instructions, hopefully say them correctly. Okay, so let's try this. And because I'm giving you the instructions, it's not going to be so difficult for you. But I just want you to get to know the steps, and then just do it yourself. And don't worry about the pace. If the 8 you have to do really quickly because it's hard for you at first to get that much air in for that long, then do the 8 really quickly. Just count quickly to 8. If you want to hold it in for longer than my 4, that's also fine. But let's just start. So we're going to start at a certain speed that I hope is enough, and I'll try to say the letters also. Okay, so let's start. Ready? Inhale, Mem, Ayin, hold, Hey, Vav, Hey. Exhale, Lamed, Hey, Yud, Nun, Vav. Rest, Hey, Vav, Hey, Echad. Inhale, Mem, Ayin, Yud, Shin, Reish, Aleph, Lamed. Hold, Hey, Vav, Hey. Exhale, Lamed, Hey, Yud, Nun, Vav. Rest, Hey, Vav, Hey, Echad. Inhale. Mem, Ein, Yud, Shin, Reish, Aleph, Lamed. Hold. Hey, Vav, Hey. Exhale. Lamed, Hey, Yud, Nun, Vav. Rest. Hey, Vav, Hey, Echad. Inhale. Mem, Ein, Yud, Shin, Reish, Aleph, Lamed. Hold. Exhale. Inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Hold. And rest. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. And rest. Okay, so what I want you to do now is just continue at your own pace for a couple of minutes and see how you feel with it. If there's any questions, now's the time to ask if something wasn't clear.
I didn't understand.
Okay, Shema Yisrael, that's 8 letters.
Right, but that's not, you didn't say Shin, Mem.
Right, I didn't say the Shin because I said inhale. So that was like the Shin instead of the Shin.
Oh,
okay. So try. I find that if you do this 2-3 times a day, everything changes. Everything feels different. It's just the best stress relief I've ever encountered, and it has the same effect, in my opinion, as and again, this is breathing.
How long do you do it for, Rabbi?
As long as I feel I need it. 10 times, 10 cycles. Sometimes I find myself doing it like 50 cycles. It really depends on how stressed I feel, and when I feel that I can become one. Again, the most important thing here is that it's conscious. It's conscious breathing. I usually do, and that in and of itself has a tremendous effect that I've seen on the whole vagus nerve and on everything that the vagus nerve touches, which has a lot to do with the autonomous system of breathing also. But it's the digestive system, it's with the face even. A lot of the facial muscles are even affected by it, even though it's a cranial nerve, it comes out lower. So I'm not sure exactly how it proceeds up to the face. It certainly affects the ear. That for sure it does. And it's just an overall feeling of probably the strongest meditation or active meditation, call it, or breathing meditation from the Rav on faith. This is just on faith. So that's why it's very fitting to connect this with Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Let me just add something a little bit more, a tiny bit more to this. When you do the Shema Yisrael, you'll see something very interesting as you're filling up your abdomen. For me, usually in Israel, there's there's 2 olives or 3 olives in Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. There's actually 4 olives. But when I come to the first one, it's in that Yisrael, Shema Yisrael. And it's usually exactly when I even time it, I think. It sort of happens naturally, I think. When I reach that aleph, I'm bringing air into where you usually think about your lungs. It's usually in Hebrew it's called maftech halev. It's called the key of the heart. It's basically your bone here, the flat bone. When you look at the sfirot, at the names of the sfirot, so you have Keter above the head, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet is the torso. Now there's a beautiful thing about the Sfirot. If you keep going down, Netzach Hod Yesod Malchut, you'll see that there's only one Aleph, which is very surprising because Aleph is a very common letter. There's only one Aleph in all the names of the Sfirot. Keter, Chochmah, Binah, Dat, Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet. In the middle of Tiferet, not exactly the middle, but almost, there's an Aleph. And that Aleph is, again, if I correspond to Shema Yisrael, when I say Shema Yisrael, and I use that Aleph, I'm coming up, my breathing is filled up my abdomen, I'm up to my chest. That's when that Aleph hits. And I've seen again and again that when it should be, it's exactly where my chest is. As I'm filling up, again I go Shin, Mem, Ayin, Yud, Shin, Reish, Aleph, and I come to this point. You can't see it where I'm pointing, but I try to point Shin, Reish, Yud, Shin, Reish, Aleph. So I came right here. That's exactly when I feel it hitting. And I've seen time and time again that something happens at that moment. It's a tremendous experience. And I wasn't aiming for it. It sort of began to happen. I was wondering why. Why was it really happening? Until I remembered this teaching from the Rav from many years ago, that the only Aleph in the Sfirot is exactly here, is exactly where the chest is. And it's not a physical feeling, it's more like suddenly there's light. There's like this feeling of intense light and calmness that comes down. It's like a tremendous experience. Okay, so that was the breathing technique. And the breathing technique is really what I would call the faith exercise, since we've been at it for confidence exercise. And like I said, the confidence exercise was the one I was hoping that we could do in Batayin at some point. What's the confidence exercise? The confidence exercise is that you can be successful in what you do and you have nothing to fear. The confidence exercise is basically to mitigate our fear of failure. I was having a conversation with my wife, and she said, I want to do something with you. And she did this with me, and it was shocking. To me, it was just amazing. She told me, close your eyes. Now imagine that you're in the woods, the usual scary woods, middle of the night, not middle of the night, whatever you feel comfortable imagining. Now imagine that you're holding hands. For me, my father was a figure who was like that, somebody who could get everything done. So she told me, imagine your father on one side, and imagine the Baal Shem Tov holding your hand on the other side. And now imagine yourself walking through the woods with them, on either side of you. What do you feel? So I told her, I have this incredible feeling of being able to do everything I'm supposed to do. It's like they give me this confidence, they trust in me enough, they have enough confidence in me that they're awakening my own confidence. And so, walking with them. And then she did something that really shocked me. She said, and now you know what the Baal Shem Tov is saying to you. And she whispered something. I didn't understand what she was doing. But I'm walking with them, and she says, this is what he's saying to you. And she whispers something, and I can't hear it. So I opened my eyes, and I said, Chana, I couldn't hear you. She says, no, it's not me saying it. You have to hear the Baal Shem Tov saying it. So let's try it again. So she let me go into this again, and I'm walking through the woods with my father and the Baal Shem Tov. Unfortunately or not fortunately, I now have a picture of the Baal Shem Tov. I'm not sure, but there's a lot of similarity. And by the way, this was a real exercise that was done in its day by Rebbe Elimelech of Lizhensk. The Rebbe Elimelech of Lizhensk was very upset that he had never seen the Baal Shem Tov. He never got to meet him, even though they were alive at the same time. If I'm not mistaken, they were alive at the same time. But he even never met him. And he was heartbroken by it. So eventually the Maggid told him to go out into the woods and to just imagine that he's with the Baal Shem Tov. And he did this for a while until he finally, on the opposite side of a mountain that he was on, and he saw that he was made out of 600, there's two versions to it, either 613 or 600,000 composite image made out of himself, out of many, many soul roots, or souls that were connected to him, sparks of souls that were connected to him. So she says to me, you're supposed to hear it. I can't tell you what he says. I'm just setting up the scenario. So we did it again, and this time I heard. I heard. Obviously, at that moment, that was like the statement. And I won't share it with you because it's personal, but it's an incredible way to picture yourself with the Baal Shem Tov. And if you, maybe I need to give you a little bit. The young man, even as a child, who was just orphaned, and he lives in the woods. That's why I wanted us to go to Batayin, so you can experience the woods at night. It's not an easy thing to be there. And he very quickly has to learn to put his complete faith in Hashem. That's the first stage. But then also to begin to believe that whatever he needs to do, Hashem is giving him the strength to do. Hashem is giving him Hashem has confidence in him that he can attain what he needs to attain. So imagine going with this man who is comfortable somehow in this setting that's very uncomfortable for most people. Not just for most people, I'd say for all people. And not only is he comfortable there, he's confident. He's confident that no evil can befall him. But not only that, and for that you have to remember running his horses in the woods, in the Motzei Shabbos, in the middle of the night. And the people who were with him felt that they were flying because it was a surreal experience. It was as knowing what he's doing and what his mission is in this pitch darkness, and the horses running so fast. Why are they not against trees? What's going on here? That's the incredible confidence. In fact, it says that the confidence was so high there that Alexei, the driver, didn't hold the reins. He just let the horses go, and he turned around looking to the back of the wagon. And the horses just ran. That's the most incredible, powerful sense of confidence that I'm on my mission and I can succeed in it. So if you think about all these stories of the Baal Shem Tov, and if you don't know enough of them, just read them. There's so many to be read. And each one of them is really about the confidence that the Baal Shem Tov imbued people with, that you can fulfill your mission in life. And he showed them, look at me. I'm driving horses without touching them in the pitch darkness of the woods in the middle of the night, and coming to exactly the place that I need to be in at the right time to do the right thing. So that image is one that I want you to practice by yourself. It's just a guided image of just imagining yourself walking through the woods in pitch darkness, but holding hands with the Baal Shem Tov. Or if you feel uncomfortable, her name was Leah Rachel. Rachel Leah, I never remember which one. I think it's Rachel Leah was her name, and she had the same qualities that he had. And you're walking with her, and a woman that you feel can give you confidence, whether it's your mother or somebody else, and walking to your destination clearly, just like Nachshon ben Aminadab, we talked about it last week, went straight through the sea. There's nothing to stop you. You're not going to bump into trees. You're not going to fall into holes. You're not going to stumble over roots. You're walking with somebody who sees. And that's how you feel about yourself, that you're in good hands. And God willing, we'll meet again next week. In good health for everybody.